I have the pleasure of sitting down here with the Penderecki String Quartet, and as part of this a little chat, as part of this special occasion, the celebration of the 250 years since Beethoven's birth. And we may end up chatting a little bit about the Opus 130 / Opus 133, which you'll present for us, which you presented for us in honor of this occasion. But I thought we might just have a little chat about what Beethoven and Beethoven's music have meant to you as musicians and as an ensemble. And I want to see if maybe we could go around the circle and you might introduce yourselves and offer a couple words about that theme, or a couple thoughts, just as you like. So shall we begin with Katie?
Sure, thank you, Daniel. My name is Katie Schleicher. I'm the cellist of the Penderecki Quartet, and Beethoven has been a calling. You don't end up in a string quartet without falling in love with Beethoven, and certainly I listened obsessively to the late quartets as a youngster, and I feel that his works take on, each one of them, their own persona, their own life force, and they've each taught me a great deal about the capacity of the human spirit to overcome challenges and soar and feel maximum capacity. And I'm still learning from these great works, let alone Beethoven himself. So thank you so much for hosting us, Daniel.
Thanks, Katie. And Christine, do you feel like offering a few thoughts too?
Well, I too, like Katie, fell in love with these works when I was in high school. We owned all the Deutsche Grammophon recordings of all Beethoven's works, and I just stumbled upon the string quartets, and especially the late quartets. I was confused, intrigued, and compelled by them. I felt like I didn't understand them, and I would say that those words probably would still apply. I understand them more than I did then, but they're enigmatic, they're operatic. I almost feel that they represent the operas that Beethoven didn't write, that Othello was, his one and only, but the string quartets are very vocal. There's a lot of rhetoric in it. There's a lot of expression and singularity in his voice. So these works have been also a vehicle for learning about the wonderful medium of a string quartet, which I've played in a string quartet for about 38 years of my life. And each time we come back to a piece, because probably I've played them all at least twice, it's always like meeting an old friend and also getting to know a new friend. There's so much to delve into. They're each treasures.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Christine. It's funny, we ended up sort of starting sonically at the bottom, didn't we? So we started cello and viola. And do either of our violinists feel like introducing themselves and offering some thoughts?
You see how democratic we are. My name's Jeremy Bell. I play violin, and Jerzy and I both play both first and second violins in the quartet, which is maybe kind of interesting to have this dual role in the cycle too, because we're sort of playing off each other's roles. Sometimes giving each other a little bit more artistic freedom, let's say in the first violin position. But at the same time, I think I'm just really moved by the way Katie and Christine talk about the Beethoven quartets. And, I think similarly, these works go way back for me as a young person. I remember I was given a gift of the Budapest Quartet playing the Beethoven quartets on LP, and I had an LP player in my bedroom, and I'd go to sleep listening to records. So yeah, the works live with you over a lifetime. And as Christine said, you're just always finding new things that you hadn't noticed before, or you feel differently about what Beethoven's really trying to say. And so that's really fun. And we're just not finished in that exploration.
And I'm Jerzy Kaplanek, and I play violin, as well as Jeremy mentioned. And my first big affair with Beethoven started when the long plays arrived in my household when I was maybe in grade 6, and there were the Beethoven symphonies recording with Herbert von Karajan and the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, and I remember listening them for the first time in one record after the other within a couple of days, and I got so fascinated, and I got so intrigued with the variety of the development. Starting with the first symphony, I really remember how surprised I was to hear the voices in the Ninth Symphony, and when I turn on the first symphony, I was a big fan of Mozart at that point, and then so it kind of reminded me of that music. But by the end, when we got to the Ninth Symphony, it was just kind of shocking and fascinating. And so this music really amazes me up to today. And the quartets didn't come to my life until I was really late in my teenagers and beginning of the 20s, when I was 20, and the quartets just touch my soul so deeply. And this is something that we're going to be exploring for our whole lives. I mean, we've been doing this for decades, and doesn't seem to stop. And we never get bored of that, because how one can get bored of Beethoven? He's such superhuman. He's so on one side so heroic, on the other side he's so there's so much humor and the tenderness that really touches my heart in a very, very special way. So I'm looking forward to finish this cycle and many more.
Thanks so much for sharing all those wonderful insights with me and with us. It's really beautiful insights. I must say that it's thanks to you that I first encountered Beethoven's string quartets, and I very distinctly recall the occasion on which I first heard the Grosse Fuga, although I don't quite remember where it was. It was either in Kincardine at the Summer Music Festival, when I was a wee little student there, and the Penderecki String Quartet were coaching, or it was in the Maureen Forster Recital Hall. But I distinctly recall the experience of sort of not knowing what was happening to me. I had heard lots of fugues before. Being the son of an organist and composer, I heard really a lot of fugues. So in that sense, it was familiar. In the contrapuntal, that sense of tradition, there was something familiar about it. But it took me for a ride, and was very engrossing and puzzling and mystifying, and an extraordinary experience that I remember to this day. So I wonder if you have any thoughts about this particular piece. Well, so the Grosse Fuga, that original last movement of the Opus 130 string quartet. But I wonder if you have other thoughts too about that piece as a whole, in which you're in the thick of, I guess, at the moment in your recording.
Yeah, it's hard to talk about the fugue without actually the context of the whole Opus 130, because there's a certain build up to that movement. And personally, I really prefer to play the fugue with the Opus 130 with the original ending with the fugue, because of that very aspect. And there's a strong connection between the movements. And of course, we're dealing with a form that was just extended. For the first time, we're hearing 6 movements in a string quartet, and the way Beethoven crafts the work is incredible. Like the connection between the first movement and second being that that the B flat carries on, but it changes to minor key, and then that very first note of the third movement is the last note of the previous movement, and even reminds us of the beginning, the descending passage at the very, very opening of the first movement. If you have a chance to hear that again, I would recommend to listen to that. And then from there we going to the Tedesco, which it's all of a sudden it's the same note except without the flat on it, and it opens up this beautiful G major key and prepares us for, it's almost like a moment of relief, because right after that comes the incredible cavatina, which again gives us such a reflective and calm feeling that by the time the fugue comes in, we just don't even know how we arrived there, and yet it's this impact, and yet we have another connection with that G and ending the cavatina on the G and starting the fugue on the G, and we don't know what key we are in because it's unison, and it's just how he's done this is incredible. And I let the others to say their impressions, and this is too short to say all of it, but what I would like to say specifically about the fugue is how I'm taken by the fact that a form that used to be more intellectual, we grew up on hearing Bach's fugues and so on, and the beautiful music, but there's also such intellect that drives the form by its nature, and Beethoven was able to change that into emotion, and all of a sudden we're not really thinking about all of the structure, although it's very clear, but it's just like an emotional powerhouse, and the way how he presents the material within first statements, 3 of them, which we hear the 2 as a main 2 themes for the first part, and then the third one appears in the slower part, which is a little bit of emotional relief, and the fight for place for all of this thematic material, which I think, and we talk about it a lot in the quartet, how much we should be phrasing, how much we should be voicing, and how much of struggle we need to bring to that piece. So this thematic material really brings emotion that is just undescribable. And unless you're there, it's like, you're supposed to finish this piece sweating and just being tired. I think that's really where that piece leads us. So I let the others say more, but it's a incredible piece that will continue to be discovered for the next many generations, in my opinion. And there's just like so much in there that even today it still sounds like, wow, where this came from, and this is 2020.
I just wanted to just pick up a little bit on what Jerzy was talking about, the continuity of the movements. And something that's been fascinating me a little bit is there's a common narrative, the way he concludes each movement, because there's always a sort of moment of final reflection and then a rather sudden or gruff finishing gesture. So each of the 5 movements, I mean, the cavatina itself is different, although it also doesn't quite end like a true tonic because there's so much of the G's in the chord. And even the Grosse Fuga itself, for me, there's something a little bit sudden about the way it finishes, because if it for a 750 bar fugue or whatever, how much it is, the wind up itself is only about 20 bars. And again, that narrative of a moment of repose and reflection before it kind of slams the door, I find is a fascinating narrative. And it's like he's like approaching something heroic, but he's not entirely comfortable in those clothes anymore. And I think that's, well, it's very much the late style too. But I find it interesting the way that narrative sort of permeates all the movements.
I'm struck by that use of the your phrase gruff. That's I confess that that's very much part of the image that I retain of Beethoven. I think thanks to that children's series, Beethoven Lives Upstairs. I don't know if if you listen to that as well. Anyway, sorry, that's just picking up on Jeremy's use of gruff, which but sorry, Katie, it sounded like you were going to say something.
I was going to jump in that the fugue very much feels like almost a fight to the death. I mean, there are moments where it is so viscerally. It's adrenaline in a new form. It's completely overwhelming to be inside the thick of it. And particularly the two main double fugue areas are completely emotionally overwhelming, earth-shattering, no less. But I've also been struck in this recently in his growing capacity to put sort of the everyday, mundane, almost snippets, vignettes amongst these moments of being swept off your feet and with more powerful emotions than we might otherwise know how to feel without his help, or simply that life itself brings these things to us, I suppose. There are moments in the fugue where it sounds almost flippant, where he'll take the 6/8 theme and it sounds like something you'd whistle on the street with not a care in the head. And the moments of the middle movement that seem like life is a-okay and it's just pure privilege and pleasure. And so there's a humanness and relatability to his music making when this juxtaposition happens between lightweight and heavyweight. The contrast is profound. I read recently the vignette, the image of Beethoven not attending the premiere performance of 130 and the Fugue, partly out of fear of the possible potential reactions, and the quartet, his buddies that he had developed the art of quartet writing with, the Chopin's quartet, they came back with a report, and they were very nervous to let him know that the two movements that had been requested for encores were the sort of light-hearted vignette, or the snapshots, the character pieces. And he said, "What about the Fugue? Was that not requested to be repeated?" And he was asses, cow, like he thought, these idiots, they don't understand what. And I think this music he spent his life struggling, and the sketches of his works were evidence of how difficult it was for him to wrestle his ideas specifically onto the page. And it's no less of a struggle for us to either play this music or even for an audience to receive this message of extremes, of extreme passion. And I think we do have to fight a little bit for people to listen and receive this. And the one last thought is that Beethoven is so rooted in the past. He had, I think, an eye in either direction of his historical context and his uncompromising vision for the future. And I think this is what makes him so understandable and approachable, is that he has this foundation, this structure, this just unflinching scholarship and artistry. And it will never cease to be a challenge to us, and I think to future generations. And I hope that he is a source of joy and inspiration, and always current, a source of inspiration. Anyway, I'll let Chris finish.
I'm so inspired just listening to my three partners speak about it. Like it's, you know, it's so genuine for all four of us that you can't help but be moved in every which way. Like I almost wanted to look up a list of adjectives and descriptive words, because it feels like Beethoven, like in an oral sense, he manifests all those things of utter joy. Like in the third movement, we talk about, what I mean, we enjoy every movement, but particularly the third movement, playing it, I feel a certain inner joyfulness and also very conversational with my partners in playing the music, and it's a type of joy I know in no other context in my life. So it feels that way. And what I wanted to say about the fugue is that it feels like the mother of all fugues, or the granddaddy of all fugues. It's utter insanity and it's utter beauty, and what Katie was saying about the extremes, and life has that in it. So I really feel like, and I feel like right now there's a lot about Beethoven that represents what's going on in the world. So it feels very, very current, even though it was written a while ago. But I love how the guys both talked about the endings and of the movements. It really is. It's almost like a slap in the face sometimes, or just like, hey, did you hear me? Like, just, it's like this sprinkle of sound and gesture, and Beethoven really encourages you to listen with your whole being. But the end of the fugue, especially because I have the eighth notes that trot to the end, it feels like the end of it, just when we play it, I feel just filled with adrenaline. I feel filled with joy. And also the end of it just feels so exalted. So to be in the middle of that, I mean, I remember I played in many orchestras in my life. That also, the sense of being in an orchestra when things are really buzzing and really feeling great. It's amazing to be in the middle of an orchestra in that setting. But to be in the fugue almost feels orchestral. It has that sense of, like, the horns and the winds and the percussion. It just has an orchestral feel about it. And there's nothing like that feeling.
I must say it's so wonderful to hear you speaking about this, and so passionately. It gives one a real insight into the experience of that you have all the time, playing together and playing this extraordinary music together. I'm struck by so much of what you've shared already. I think I'll be digesting for quite some time. But maybe we could finish our chat with just thinking about how it is. I mean, here we are, 250 years after the birth of this extraordinary figure, and that figure retains such importance in our lives as musicians, and his music, Beethoven's music, remains so important to our understanding of the repertoire, and what, maybe I could say it, I'll put it in strong words, like what music is, and maybe even what music is for. But I wonder what you think about how we who have heard everything, from the Rite of Spring to you name it, Julius Eastman. We hear so much, and even in the course of a single day, we might hear medieval music and hip hop and really the fullest possible spectrum of music. And nonetheless, my sense is that when we hear this work, it strikes us as new and important and vital and alive. is that too big a theme to conclude on, or what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of that.
Well, I think all great music stands the test of time, and it's just simply that. I mean, we wouldn't be playing it if we didn't feel that we wanted to invest so much of our life into it. So it's kind of, it sort of speaks for itself. And I think that we don't really have to defend it. It's, but I think also, like what you were saying, there are certain themes or certain images and narratives, like what Christine was saying, that feel very contemporary, just this feeling of brotherhood or community, and like people having rights, human rights as a basic concept. Like you sort of like, these are themes and feelings that Beethoven was dealing with and overcoming really difficult struggles. Like those are, it's in the music, and it's sort of dripping and ready to give you a big hug. And I think that's why it feels still very relevant. And I think that's why it means so much to so many people.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. We might, if you feel happy, I know you probably have a fugue to play. You might even have. So I'm happy to, unless you have some final thoughts to wrap up our little chat. I'm so grateful to you for sharing your insights with me and with us today. I gather that there will be at the end of this chat now, when it's broadcast, a bit of a reception in honor of the birthday boy. But after that, I guess we'll sort of be into the holiday season. So I wanted to wish you, the Penderecki String Quartet, a very happy holiday time, restful and safe and fruitful. And I want to wish also our wonderful Music at Noon audience a very happy holiday time as well. So thanks once again to Katie and Christine and Jerzy and Jeremy for being with us today. And thanks so very much for this special celebration of music and for playing Opus 130/Opus 133 for us, this extraordinary work in celebration of Beethoven's birthday. Thanks again.